You're listening to the Packernet Podcast Network.
U.S. Cellular has noticed the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu's on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social posts that we don't actually like, which is ironic. Which is why U.S. Cellular created Us Mode, to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from U.S. Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome into Packers Total Access. My name is Clayton. You can check us out on Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter at Packers_access. You can email us, PackersTotalAccess@gmail.com. You can text us, 865-658-5824. We are flying solo this morning as Jacob is recovering from birthday festivities, I'm sure. I heard that he was over at Brookview Meadows. I don't know. That was the last sighting, the last place of Jacob being seen in the public. Emilio obviously is in his race car bed, and Tim is out enjoying some time with the wife out in the countryside. So we're going to be flying solo and talking a little Packers with you guys and gals this morning. Appreciate everybody hopping in here. I know the chat's already lit up. Just a shout out to everybody in there, or some in there anyway. Omer, we got Romero in the house. Good to see you, buddy. Been a little bit. We got Greg. We got Prince. Let's see here. Ron Samble in the house. Harry Cheese, Dane Stromstad, Stephen Smith. Good to see everyone. Appreciate y'all, like I said, swinging through here. So just bear with me. There's going to be some dead air, and you guys know I hate that. So we're going to be, at times, I'm going to be trying to include the chat as much as I can, but we're also going to hammer out a bunch of topics, too. This is the first time I've done a solo show in quite some time. So we may kill the camera, too. There's no reason for you guys and gals to stare at my ugly mug all morning long. But all right, let's do this. First thing first, Ron Sample says, Clayton posted a cool picture of him and his nephew on Twitter. I missed them high school football days. Man, Ron, there's nothing more Americana than Friday Night Lights. And people probably get tired of me tweeting about it, but it's like the highlight of the week for me. You know, you get through the work week, and hopefully if everything goes as planned, I know me as a business owner, my goal is to get the majority of everything done Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday, you kind of coast into the weekend and get home in time to, from the grind and get cleaned up and go out and watch a little high school football. If the nephew's playing pretty far away, we'll stay here at the house. We've got a high school team that we support locally. We may go over there. But another thing that I like to do is just sit at home and watch. I'll have like 2 or 3 screens going with high school football on it. It's the lifeblood of American football. You know, if you don't build that culture at an early age to teach kids to love football, and it's been under attack quite a bit with the whole head trauma issue, which, listen, it's a real issue. I know some people roll their eyes and think, oh, you're watering down the game, you're ruining the game. Anybody who listens to this show knows I take that very, very serious, and I used to didn't be like that. Early on, man, it was, I was one of those guys that was screaming, y'all are ruining the game. They know what they're signing up for and this and that. And then as I began to do my own research and not just listen to what mainstream says, it's an ugly situation. So I say that because youth football and high school football is kind of under attack a little bit. And everyone needs to be safe and cautious of all that goes into that. And all the risks that are there. And there's ways that you can teach the game of football at a safer level. Man, we got to protect it, because I'm telling you that there's nothing like Friday Night Lights. And like I said, building that culture around young men, and in some cases women now, right? We had a young lady that played on this local high school team a couple years ago, and watched her lay a couple guys out on special teams. It was awesome. So I have no problem with that either, as long as it's deemed safe for them. But high school football is just awesome, man. And he's a senior this year, so I can't miss any game. I'm going to be missing next Friday's game because obviously we're going to be doing a post-game show here because it's so rare that you get a Packers game on a Friday night. But, yeah, I'll be missing that one. But other than that, that's the only one I'm going to be missing that's going to be here local. So gotta soak it up, man, because you're going to blink. I'm telling you. You guys hear me say it all the time. You're going to blink your eyes and you're going to look up in a few years and go, where did everybody go? What happened? It goes quick, man. I've definitely had that smack me in the face this year. I used to be the dude going, I ain't trying to hear that, man. I'm too busy to be hearing about, time's going to start flying by. It's true, man. I've reached that age. So, all right, let's see here. Ron Sample says, love the Matt LaFleur quote that Ja likes the new kicker. Just trying to get the kickers talk started. Love it, Ron. Everybody loves the kicker talking here for sure. I did see that quote actually. And I don't know it word for word, obviously, but it sounded like Ja, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, Ja seen him kicking. I think Matt said the first kick might have been like a 59-yarder, and he nailed it. And then a few minutes later, Jair Alexander walks over and to Matt LaFleur and is like, hey, I really like this dude. They may have found him. Wouldn't that be so awesome? With all the kicker talk and us debating, should it be Andre? Should it be Greg? Should we go sign someone else? How's this going to work out? And then the guy they bring in is like, man, his stats are eerily similar to Anders Carlson's college stats. And I haven't done an extensive deep dive because I'll be honest with you, I'm all kickered out here. But how awesome would it be if he's the next Ryan Longwell, the next Mason Crosby, right? That would just be unbelievable. That Goody just said, all right, enough playing around. That dude that nobody else wants, he's going to be our kicker for the next 10 years. That's very, very optimistic. Highly unlikely that happens, seeing that he was a street free agent, but definitely possible, man. So hopefully they do get that squared away sooner rather than later. Let's see here. We got Bruce in the chat said, morning, Packer family. Shout out to Packer greats, Aaron Campman and the Claymaker, Packers Hall of Fame. Yes, sir. Pretty cool, too. I had posted a video. I shared it yesterday. I won't bore y'all with it again, but if you go to my Twitter, @Packers_access, you'll see the video of Clay Matthews taking a little shot at Aaron Rodgers, which was just awesome. I love that. You could tell with the exception of one or two guys on that Super Bowl team, Greg Jennings and Michael Finley, everyone else absolutely loves Aaron Rodgers, right? And Clay Matthews and Aaron were really good friends and still are to this day, but it was cool seeing that little tongue-in-cheek shot. I can't wait till Aaron retires and comes back into the Packer Hall of Fame and we retire his number, all that, because it's going to be, man, I've got to make it up for that. I'll just put it that way. I've got to find a way to try to get in that room, no doubt about it. But all right, let's see what else we got in here in the chat real quick, and then we'll jump into some topics. We got some really cool stuff lined up today. It's going to be a lot of fun. When I'm flying solo, you're going to get a lot more analytical stuff, a lot more it's going to be less laughter, which sucks, right? Just like the show. When the guys are in here, man, it's like just sitting around drinking a daddy soda with a couple buddies talking ball. But when I fly solo, it's going to be a lot of information and just opinion, things like that. So let's see here. There was someone else that had thought someone else had something. I think it might have been our boy Omer. Here we go. Yeah, so it was a 56-yarder. Omer said, quote, his first kick, it was a 56-yarder into the wind. That's why I was thinking it was 59. And he nailed it. Jair actually, after a couple of his kicks, came up to me and he's like, man, I love this guy. That's what he said to Matt LaFleur. So pretty cool, man. Pretty darn cool. And that came from, I believe, the Matt Schneidman interview with Coach LaFleur that's going to be going on all year long. So pretty cool. All right, let's get to it. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Like I said, I'm going to try to check in from time to time. It's going to be hard flying solo. First things first, we had some roster moves, right? And I apologize if my voice sounds like nails on the chalkboard, man. We were doing a lot of screaming last night, so it's the ball game. But let's see here. We had a couple of roster moves, and I'll try to get this to where you guys can see it a little bit better. It says, this is from the Packers website. It says the Green Bay Packers signed fullback Andrew Beck, cornerback Kamal Hayden, and running back LaMichael Pirine, I think is how you say it, to the practice squad in place running back Nate McCrary on practice squad / injured reserve. General manager Brian Gutekunst announced. Now, they've got all the stats and everything there, all the measurables for these guys. I'll just hit the measurables real quick. I won't read the entire bio. You can go check it out yourself. But Beck, who is obviously the fullback they brung in, 6'3", 252, a 6-year player out of the University of Texas, was originally signed by the New England Patriots as an undrafted free agent on May the 2nd, 2019. Okay, he was claimed off waivers by the Broncos in 2019, And it looks like he had a stint there with the Texans maybe. So there you go. They bring in another fullback. It makes you wonder. Think about this. If you kind of read between the lines, AJ, right? Both he and Matt LaFleur, AJ trims down, and then Matt LaFleur made a comment like, "Yeah, we had some big plans for AJ this year in a role that we're going to play him in." I don't know how you guys felt, but a couple things. The first thing is, okay, that means they're changing something about the way they use him. So maybe they were going to use him as a true H-back, like that fullback, right? Maybe that was the plan. I don't know. So with that being said, as soon as they kind of find out how serious the stinger is for AJ, and obviously he's out for the year now, they went out and re-signed Henry Pearson, right? And now they bring in another fullback to put on the practice squad. So it does kind of pique my interest that they're carrying two fullbacks now, right? And when I say carry, I mean obviously practice squad guys. Does that mean that they are going to show more 21 personnel? Are they trying to find a guy or two that can play that role that A.J. Dillon was going to potentially play? I don't know. It's just, like I said, strictly speculation at this point, but just something to keep an eye on for sure, man. All right, next, Hayden. Obviously, he was the cornerback, Kamal Hayden, that was signed to the practice squad. 6'1", 192, pretty good size there. A rookie out of the University of Tennessee, was originally selected in the 6th round. Number 211 overall of the 2024 NFL Draft by the Kansas City Chiefs, and was released by the Chiefs after training camp. He played 3 seasons for Tennessee. That was 21 through 23, and 1 season for Independence Community College in 2020. So there you go. So he was drafted by the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, but then released by the Chiefs after training camp. Now, he ends up signing with the Packers practice squad. That's not to say that the Chiefs didn't offer him a spot on the practice squad, right? Maybe he felt he had a better opportunity to make a roster with the Packers. I don't know all the details there. But Kansas City seen something in him pre-draft to take him in the 6th round, and that's, I think we would all have to say it's the best team in the league. And listen, one of the big misconceptions about last year's Super Bowl run for the Kansas City Chiefs is that, it was just the offense. It's just, that's Pat Mahomes. That's Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes made some timely plays, don't get me wrong. But that defense is the reason they won the Super Bowl. So if they see a guy in the 6th round and they deem him worthy of a draft pick, and specifically a 6th-round pick, maybe he's got some talent there, right? And again, just because they didn't bring him back on a practice squad doesn't mean they didn't want him on the practice squad. Maybe he chose the Packers because of the specific situation. We don't know exactly there. So just something to keep an eye on there. He might have some upside for sure. Let's see. We got P. Ryan, right? That was what position was he again? Running back LaMichael P. Ryan. Now, obviously, they had to place Nate McCrary on the practice squad injured reserve, so they need another body there to bring in. P. Ryan was 5'11", 216, a 4th-year player out of the University of Florida, was originally selected in the 4th round, number 120 overall of the 2020 NFL Draft by the New York Jets. He played in 14 regular season games for the Jets from 20 to 21, and 5 games with 1 start for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2023. P. Ryan also spent time on practice squads of the Philadelphia Eagles, the Dolphins. He recorded 340 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns on 94 attempts, so that's only 3.6 a pop, with 14 receptions for 96 yards. So with McCrary, and I think it was Jacob mentioning McCrary, got kind of excited that McCrary made it to the practice squad, but now he's on IR. You've got to have a couple extra bodies to jump up there and play, right? Because we've seen it firsthand. When you look at the depth chart, and again, we need to get this updated as we go through, but when you look at the depth chart, obviously A.J. Dillon's on season in and IR. Marshawn Lloyd's still listed as question, but you only got 2 backs there. So you got to have a back or two that you can elevate on game day in case you do need to run the rock, or God forbid, Emmanuel Wilson or Josh Jacobs gets banged up. And we know that's going to happen this year. It happens every year at the running back position. Many people were predicting Josh Jacobs is going to be that bell cow top back this year. I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. I hope they don't run him into the ground the first half of the season. You know what I'm saying? But I'm of the opinion, I don't know how people can make predictions like that when we don't even know how the defense is going to play us in certain situations. You know what I mean? Like it's just such a vanilla take to say, oh, man, they're going to run the heck out of him. What if defenses load the box? That means we're going to be checking the RPO looks and maybe even changing the play altogether and going down the field and taking advantage of everyone being at the line of scrimmage. So to sit here and just, I don't know, casually say, man, he's going to be a belt. We don't know that for sure, right? And he is going to be a factor in the passing game. There's no doubt about that. He's hands down the best running back on the roster. He's also the best receiving back on the roster. So we'll see how that shakes out. Again, I just don't want them to not have him for the second half of the season, because we know when that weather turns, you need that running game at Lambeau. Although Jordan played pretty well in the cold, struggled a little bit there in the downpour in San Francisco there when they got beat out of the playoffs. But as far as the cold, I felt like Jordan held his own second half of the season. So, got large hands, can grip the football well, can really spin that thing into that Green Bay wind. So, but we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. Again, those are the three signings. If we were to take a quick look at the practice squad as a whole, and I really like to do this because, guys, last year, you remember, we were constantly signing people, elevating people, right? I mean, when Matt LaFleur says it's a 69-man roster now, he is not lying. That's exactly what it's turned into. I'm trying to get this zoomed in here where you can actually see it a little bit better. I guess that's good enough. I don't know. They're going to hammer us with ads too, but let's see here. Practice squad. So here is your Green Bay Packers practice squad. You've got defensive lineman Deslin Alexander. You've got fullback Andrew Beck. Again, 6'3", 252. That is a thick human being right there. Omar Brown, we broke him down extensively yesterday. That was a new signing to the practice squad. DB that we talked about a little bit during the draft. It's early on in the draft process. I think he peaked in the 180s. Later on, he peaked around 340, maybe 360. So, I'm sorry, he didn't peak. He dropped all the way down to 340, 360. So at one point, he was considered a borderline top 100 prospect. He was kind of about to break into that area. Very versatile. He can play the slot. He can play pretty much all over the field from the defensive back standpoint. Sean Clifford, quarterback. Like we said, this is probably going to be your backup quarterback on game days until Malik Willis gets his feet under him. Now, obviously, the Packers are protecting Malik Willis with the keeping him on the 53-man roster. They don't want another team to sign him. So,
U.S. Cellular has noticed the way we use our phones has gotten ironic. We try to put our phones down for dinner, but the menu's on a QR code. That's ironic. We hit like on social posts that we don't actually like, which is ironic. Which is why U.S. Cellular created Us Mode, to help us reconnect with each other and use our phones less ironically. A phone company wanting people to use their phones less is ironic. Let's find us again with Us Mode from U.S. Cellular. Visit uscellular.com/built-for-us to get started.
You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com. You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com. You're a podcast listener, and this is a podcast ad. Reach great listeners like yourself with podcast advertising from Lips and Ads. Choose from hundreds of top podcasts offering host endorsements, or run a reproduced ad like this one across thousands of shows to reach your target audience with Lips and Ads. Go to lipsandads.com now. That's LIBSYN ads.com.
I think it's going to be one of those situations where if Sean Clifford is called up to back up Jordan Love against the Eagles, then I imagine you would deactivate Malik Willis. That way, he doesn't count towards your game day active roster, right? You may be able to get another body up in his place. So James Esther, defensive lineman, also on the practice squad here. Kamal Hayden, we just talked about him. It may be Haddon. I think it's Hayden. I could be wrong. Alex Hale, your kicker. Now, they seen something in Alex Hale to tie up the practice squad spot. When it comes to a kicker like that, if you don't sign him and have him on the practice squad, you can still check in with him midway through the season, have him come in for another quote-unquote tryout, right? See how he's progressed. The fact that they wanted to add him as the international player into that program, it tells me they want to see him kicking every single week, right? And if they can improve his game, and obviously he's a guy that is kind of converting over from another sport, if he can improve his game, and they've got an eye on it. As soon as that click happens, then maybe that is the kicker of the future. I don't know. Right now, I would not put my money on it, seeing that you got Narveson in now, right? So let's see. Donovan Jennings, obviously offensive lineman. He is on the practice squad. It gives you a little bit of depth there at O-line. Kalen King, cornerback. This is a guy I think is going to be called up all throughout the year. I would be very, very, very surprised if we look up and go, man, Kalen King didn't get called up at all from the practice squad. I think he's going to be one of those game day activations at least once or twice during the season. God forbid we have some injuries, but I feel really good about knowing he's our 6th or 7th DB, coming in off the practice squad. Ellis Merriweather, one of the running backs we were talking about, and he's a little bit bigger back, man, 6'1", 220. That's a guy that you can call up and help fill that running back room out if you do run into injuries as well. LaMichael P. Ryan, we just talked about him. You've got cornerback Robert Rochelle. That's another name. Robert Rochelle probably going to be activated or called up more often than Kalen King, I would imagine, because Robert Rochelle really showed up and showed out on special teams. I think that dude is a huge special teams contributor. So you'll probably see his name multiple times this year as well. Chris Russell at linebacker. Lasita Smith, offensive line. Messiah Swinson, tight end. That's essentially your 4th tight end right now. 6'7", 259. It sounded like he had a pretty decent camp. I didn't hear people talking about him screwing up in camp, and usually that's a good sign that, hey, all right, you know how it is, the tight end position. It's so-and-so whiffed on a blocker, so-and-so with the drop, right? You just didn't hear that much during the preseason or during the specifically during training camp. So that's going to be your 4th tight end. And it did kind of surprise me that we kept him over Joel Wilson. But, man, 6'7", 259, you can't teach that, or you can't teach that kind of size, right? You can't coach that kind of size. That's a massive human being, only 24 years old. So you'll probably see him activated from time to time if we get into some injury concern. And when you look at the offensive depth chart from the tight end standpoint too, with Luke Musgrave, man, you got Luke Musgrave, you got Tucker Kraft, Ben Sims. Obviously, Tyler Davis goes on season-ending IR. He may be done in Green Bay altogether, but Tucker Kraft still listed as questionable. You feel good, even if Tucker Kraft wasn't ready to go, and I think he will be ready to go. Tucker Kraft wanted to be back in camp 2 weeks before Matt LaFleur even took him off the PUP list. So he wants to be out there. If he has anything to say about it, he's going to be out there in Brazil playing at tight end. You guys know I've been pretty vocal about this. I feel like Tucker Kraft is the better tight end of the two. Now, they're two different types of tight ends, and that's really where Matt LaFleur and his staff are not going to look at it like, this is tight end 1, this is tight end 2. He's looking at it like, all right, let's use Tucker Kraft as our traditional Y and our U. Musgrave's going to be our flex guy, right? And seeing that you like to run that weak outside zone that they like to run so often, I think what you're probably going to have with Luke Musgrave is him trying to dig safeties out, trying to dig backers out on the backside, the away side of the outside zone weak run, right? So what you'll probably have is him and Tucker Kraft from time to time when you do want to run the football and you do line Musgrave up as a traditional tight end, you'll have Musgrave on the line of scrimmage and you'll have Tucker Kraft kind of playing almost towards that wing, right, offset in that U position, and he will sift over on those weak side runs and vice versa. If you want to go strong side, that's the next thing we're going to cover from Bobby Peters' book is strong side outside zone run, right? So I say all that because with Messiah Swinson here, he's going to be your 4th tight end. So if Tucker Kraft was banged up and couldn't go, there's a chance you activate Messiah Swinson for week 1 because you want to have 3 tight ends on the roster. Because essentially what happens is you're one injury away from not being able to spell your tight end out if you want to stay in 12 personnel. Now, when we dive into this upcoming week, we're really going to be looking into the matchup against the Eagles. That's where you're going to try to determine, okay, should we be in 12 personnel or should we be in 11 personnel more often? Because every week it changes. You mold that around. The way you're going to attack a defense depends on the personnel, the depth of the roster, the health of the roster of the opponent, and just how well they've been playing, right? So when you go in and look at it, if let's say with the Eagles, all right, if Tucker Kraft is a little banged up, but he's going to play, and it makes you a little nervous that if he goes out of the game and it's just Ben Sims and Luke Musgrave, if you look at the Eagles and say, man, we're going to be in 12 personnel a lot the way we're going to attack them, I'm not saying that's what the game plan is, guys. I'm saying if that is the case, then maybe you do activate Messiah Swinson. But On the flip side, if you go in and look at it and go, you know what, we need to attack them with 11 personnel, so they're going to be a nickel the majority of the night. You only need one tight end on the field. You don't even bother with activating Messiah Swinson and calling him up, right? So I think it'll probably be the latter. I don't think Messiah will get caught up, but it's all going to come down to how healthy is Tucker Kraft. I think he's ready to go. All signs at least point towards that. So the last one here is Jalen Wayne. That's Reggie Wayne's cousin. Obviously, wide receiver, 6'2", 210, got good size. You get him back on the practice squad. Is he the only wide receiver? Now, him, Julian Hicks are the two wide receivers on the practice squad. So they're the two new darlings here for the Green Bay Packers. You guys know a couple years ago it was Bo Melton. Last year, and going into training camp, it was kind of Grant DuBose. He ends up signing and going elsewhere. So now those are your two wide receivers kind of coming into the backup spots there off the practice squad bench, if you will. So, again, just wanted to kind of dive real quick into the practice squad and see how these guys may or may not fit, right? That's kind of how that shakes out there. So get the roster moves out of the way. Let's do this. Let's shift gears and talk a little national media. People going, oh, here we go. Now, this is a good thing, all right? And usually when I talk national media, it's because I'm shaking my head going, why are you even covering this? Why are we talking about it? But over at the 33rd team, I hope I'm saying this name correct, Dan Pizzuta had put an article up, and it says predictions for every major 2024 NFL award winner. I'm not going to talk about all the awards. I'm only going to talk about one, and that's MVP. When I clicked on this link, I was thinking, all right, what direction is this going to go in, right? And immediately the first thing they mention is MVP, and lo and behold, look who it is. So Dan Pizzuta from 33rd team, 2024 NFL award predictions, most valuable player is Jordan Love. And this is what it says. Who it will be, Jordan Love, quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love finished 8th in EPA per play last season, boosted by ranking 3rd across the second half of the season. So in the second half of the season, he was 3rd in EPA. Second half leaps aren't always an indicator of improvements for the following season, but there's a lot to like about how the Packers changed the offense and found the right balance to allow Love to loosen up and play more comfortably. And I tell you, man, it was about halfway through the season. I remember Matt LaFleur making a comment and saying he's just got to go out there and let it rip. He's got to go out there and just play ball and not think. To me, it feels like the first half of the season he was trying to be perfect. He was trying to be so mechanically sound that it affected his accuracy. It's kind of what because it's so rare that in season you go from being, guys, his accuracy was horrible in the first half of the season. Horrible. And the receivers were actually playing pretty darn well compared to 2022 where they led the league in drops there with Aaron's last year. So something changed in the second half of the season, and typically that's not a mechanical thing, just halfway through the season, let's change your throwing mechanics and, oh, look, the problem's fixed. I think it was quite the opposite, and it's just based off what I've seen. And the reason I say that so comfortably and confidently is because most of his big-time throws, they were off-platform. He was hopping backwards, throwing fadeaway shots, throwing on the run. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a three-step drop timing rhythm. But nonetheless, man, the accuracy really came together. So I feel good about Jordan Love going into this season. And I think he's going to carry over that confidence and that just being comfortable, not just within the offense, but within the mechanics of his throwing motion and everything. Because the dude's got great arm talent. There was somebody talking the other day, and I can't remember who it was. It was on a podcast, and they were talking about, I think it was during practice. They were like, I think it was the Baltimore Ravens joint practice. Someone was talking about it on a podcast, and they were like, man, Jordan made a few throws in that joint practice that was perfect trajectory, perfect touch, and other times absolutely perfect zip, tight spiral, tight window throws. Like you could tell his accuracy has really improved. I think it might have been Rob Domofsky who said that. I could be wrong. So I love this pick for MVP prediction here, preseason prediction or whatever by Dan Pizzuta, but I also hate it because I'm an underdog guy, man. I want to be that dude, that team that's sitting back, nobody's talking about it, and you're just making a list going, all right, I heard that. And I love to see the surprise on people's faces when you just as he said, as the manager said manager Lou Brown said in Major League, I think we should hang around and give them a nice big crap burger to eat. Talking about the media. I love watching their reaction when they go, man, Packers are good. I told you about my nephew here earlier in the year, the one that you guys seen in that picture. He's a Vikings fan. Great kid, too. And he's got a good reason to be a Vikings fan. He had some health issues as a kid, and he had to go all the way up to Minnesota, from Tennessee to Minnesota, to get treatment he needed. And when he was in the hospital, the Vikings players would always come over and see him. So that's why he's been a lifelong Vikings fan, and rightfully so. And I give him hell about it, but it's a cool little tongue-in-cheek conversation we always have. But he was sitting at the table when he was talking about Jordan Love making those throws on New Year's Eve last year, and he said, it ain't fair. It ain't fair. They got another one. I love it, man. But again, just right here, let's lie back and surprise everyone again. It's going to be very hard to do this year because everybody sees the Packers have as good a shot as anyone to win the whole damn thing this year. And Jordan Love, if we win another MVP at quarterback, the Packers, Tom Clements, it's about time we need to talk about him maybe going into the Hall or something. I mean, my goodness, how many MVPs are attached to that man's name? That's just wild to think about. Absolutely wild to think about. But anyway, Jordan Love, MVP, we'll see, right? I was going to see, there's something else I had. Dan Pizzuta hit on a couple other things too. And he's talking like over-unders for the Packers and all that good stuff. Let's just go ahead and dive into that if that's all right with you guys and gals. So we talked MVP. We got me a checklist. I'm trying to be organized, guys. Y'all proud? They grow up so fast. All right. Dan Pizzuta also said this over 30-13, over-under predictions for every team, all right? And for Green Bay, over-under, the line was set at 9.5. Now, listen, some people get their betting numbers from different websites. We'll talk about where I get mine from, and they're a sponsor of the show here in just a second. We'll hit that. But it says Green Bay Packers, 9.5 wins, so it's minus 135. And if you take the under, it's plus 115. So it tells you, it sounds like the public is more on the Packers going over 9.5 wins. All right. And we won't get into too much detail on how gambling works and this and that. Gamble responsibly. You guys hear me say all the time. I'll say it 1,000 times this year because we will be promoting BetUS. Don't gamble a single dime that you cannot afford to lose. All right. Like I always say, look at it like I'm going to take this money and I'm going to throw it in the toilet. If you can afford to do that with that money, then yeah, you're free to gamble with it. If you can't, don't touch anything in terms of putting action on game. But record prediction from Dan Pizzuta is over 9.5 wins. Says even if this number were higher, I'd be prepared to go over on the Green Bay Packers, and over for an adjusted line of 10.5 is plus 150. So if you put a little juice on that and bend the line right to 10.5 and say, okay, I think they're going to win over 10.5 games, that bet turns into a plus 150 now. So it goes from minus 135 to a plus 150. I've been real vocal. I think somewhere between 10 and 13 wins, probably the range I'm looking at this year for the Packers. So I wouldn't feel as comfortable with the 10.5 because I'm a very, very, very safe, conservative type gambler when I do put a little action on the game. But the 9.5, I would feel pretty good about taking the over there for sure. Now, if you did, like I said, try to tease it to 10.5, you can get plus 150 in most cases. So just keep that in mind. This is what he says. The offense hit its stride in the second half of the season in a way that makes it easy to see the success carrying over into 2024. With Jordan Love and the range of options at receiver, including the 2 tight ends, it's difficult to see how this team does not produce a top 10 offense. What could take this team from good to great is the defense. There's no more fascinating unit than the Green Bay Packers defense that will drastically change its scheme under Jeff Hafley. A faster, more aggressive defense should play to the roster's strengths, especially on the defensive line. So this goes hand in hand with what we talked about both offensively and defensively. Let's back up and talk offense, right? When he talks about the offense hit its stride in the second half of the season, obviously that's the case. He's saying it's hard to imagine this offense not being a top 10 offense. I think he's spot on there. I mean, when you looked at it last year, they were a top 10 offense. And now you've got another year under everyone's belt. Guys, we've brung everyone back other than John Runyon, essentially, right? So you're talking about your top receivers are going to be better. Not only going to be 1 year stronger in an NFL locker room and with, world-class trainers, they're also going to be one more year of experience watching the tape. There's going to be one more year of experience of having actual game experience and going through those ups and downs of a season. They went on, what was it, a four or a 5 game losing streak? I think it was a 4 game losing streak last year. And to see them mentally, the mental toughness, and be able to pull it back together and finish the way they did, I think it's absolutely huge. It says a lot about the offense and how they really did hit their stride. Now you add in a Josh Jacobs, who's arguably a top 5, maybe top 3 back in the league. As long as last year, and I'm going to continue to say this, as long as last year was just an outlier and was the result of a badly run offense and a bad supporting cast around him and teams being able to load the box, all those things that all the Josh Jacobs defenders have talked about this offseason, including myself, that's what it seemed like happened that last year. As long as he reverts back to where he was every other year of his career other than last year, that's going to be I don't know if it'd be an improvement from Aaron Jones. It's at the least it's going to be a push. And the reality is Aaron Jones last year was not effective in the passing game other than pass blocking. So as a pass catcher, Josh Jacobs probably going to come out and be an improvement for the Packers in the passing game. So we'll see. But, yeah, as far as the offense, I could see them being a top 10. They need to be another top 10 offense. If that offense dips outside of the top 10, something went wrong, right? Probably had significant injuries. Maybe a player or 2 or 3 took a step back. But I think what pressure does Matt LaFleur have on him? My God, that this is a surefire top 10 offense. I bet he's going to shut up. I don't want to hear that. Now, from the defensive side, what he said here, he talked about they're going to play faster, more aggressive defense that should play to the roster strengths, especially on the defensive line. Completely agree with that. You're no longer playing. Now, listen, we played a lot of single high last year. We showed 2 high shell and rotated in what we call middle field close, which is the opposite of what people claim Joe Barry ran last year. Not everyone, but a select few that like to get drunk and act like they know football. We ran 5th most in the league, middle field close, which means single high safety. That's not shell. That's not quarters. That's not cover 4. Okay. So you deviated away from what Fangio was doing. The big thing was you were still showing pre-snap shell, which many teams in the league do. Listen, I've said this before. I'll say it again. Jeff Hafley is going to do the same thing, probably less often, and that's going to be exciting for Packer fans. You're going to play with more of a spur safety, meaning a safety kind of in and around the box, a little bit more pre-snap than you've probably seen last year. Also, you're not going to be playing this matchy top coverage, I don't think. I'm sure there's match principles within Jeff Hafley's defense. Every defensive coordinator's got that. And what I mean by match is if and then is the assignment, right? Like if you're the slot corner and you're playing a cover 3 match, and that specific cover 3 match or cover 4 match, whatever it may or may not be, if your assignment is if the number 2 goes vertical, then it turns into man coverage. That's what we call match. Okay, it means if and then. If the receiver does this, then my assignment becomes that. Okay, so if the number 2, if you're playing a match principle and the number 2 receiver, when I say number 2, I'm not talking about the second best receiver on the depth chart. I'm talking about from left to right or from right to left on the outside looking in. You count the receivers off, 1 closest to the sideline, then 2, then 3. Okay, and in some cases 4. That's how you quickly identify and communicate which receiver you're talking about. So when we talk about the number 2, let's say it's a dub set, a 2x2 set. If you're saying the number 2, you're talking about the slot receiver on the left side of the field. So if the cornerback, if the nickel corner is set to cover him, but it's a zone match, and the responsibilities if and then, if he goes vertical, if he breaks a 6 to 8 yard threshold and he stays vert, whether it's just a 9 route, a post route, a corner route, once he breaks that threshold, it now becomes man coverage for that slot corner. That's what we mean by match principles. You played a whole lot of that in the system last year with Joe Barry. Now, you also did it from the safety's perspective, where you would be playing a zone match And let's give the same look and say that you're playing that too high shell and the free safety is over top of the number 2 on that side of the field where you've got a 1 and a 2 on the left side. You're trying to play what Nick Saban called triangle. You've got 3 defenders to cover 2 receivers. You always want to stay +1 on the hat count, no matter if you're in the running game trying to block up a scheme or if you're in the pass coverage doing the same thing. So when you've got 2 receivers on one side of the field, you play what we call triangle in zone match. If you've got 3 receivers on one side of the field, your trips, your trays, your bunch sets, you'll play what they call box. You've got 4 corners to that defense on that side of the field. Because essentially what happens is defense is getting broken down. The field's getting split in half. That's what's happening. Can't believe we're on an over-under topic, and I'm over here talking X's and O's like a rat on acid today. Anyway, 2 receivers, they try to give a triangle approach. Three defenders on 2 receivers +1 hat count. 3 receivers, they try to do a box approach. 4 defenders on 3 receivers +1 hat count. That's typically how match coverage works, okay? That's why we don't get too deep into the weeds with this stuff because it's most people go, I don't even care about this, Clayton. I want to know who won the game. So that's why I try to stay away from it. But that safety on that side of the field, the call may have been free safety to match, right? And what that means is the safety's keyed in on the number 2, and he's going, okay, if he breaks the 7 to 8 yard threshold, I'm now in man coverage with him. And that's why you've seen people running butt naked from time to time, was because, meaning they're open, by the way. It's the redneck way of describing an open receiver. I apologize. So if you bring a crosser opposite field and you're playing 2 match with the free safety, once he clears out that side of the field, that's why slot cross can come in. If you throw a dagger approach on one side of the field and a slot cross on the other, you're clearing that out for that crosser coming across the field. In some cases, that if and then for the slot corner on the opposite side of the field might have been, if he goes vertical, yeah, it becomes my assignment. But if he doesn't go 7 yards, I pass him along. He ends up passing that crosser across field where the safety has now been cleared out. And now you've got a hook zone underneath the nickel corner who was supposed to, who on the other play was playing match principles, is now sitting in a hook zone. Then that slot cross coming from the opposite side of the field's job is to climb. Well, that's the reason I call it a climb route most of the times rather than a crosser. You're going to climb to the open spot behind that hook zone. So that's why it's so important. Go back to 2022, and it all kind of ties together. When you seen Aaron Rodgers out there pissed off, cussing out his receivers, it's because all it takes is one receiver in a passing concept with these route combinations to screw the pooch. And now all of a sudden that hook zone is sitting right where the crosser is going. Or maybe the crosser doesn't bend out deep enough because he didn't even think to look in real time. Is the hook zone sitting at 7 yards depth or 12 yards depth, right? All those things come into play. I think you'll see less match coverage with Jeff Hafley. You're going to see more man coverage, although we're still going to play more zone than man. Make a note of that. Take it to the bank. There wasn't a team in the league last year that played more man than zone, to the best of my knowledge. So you're going to play a little more man coverage, and you're going to play a lot more spot drop, but it's going to be a little more snug. I think Hafley is going to coach these guys up a little bit better than what Joe Barry did as a linebackers coach. You're not just covering grass in a spot drop. You're covering players who are entering and exiting the zone that you're responsible to cover. If that makes sense. So that's where I think the big difference is going to be for Jeff Hafley and coming into this year. So, but again, with the over/under at 9.5, I like over 9.5. I don't know if I like over 10.5 enough to pay extra to tease it and put money on top of it. So I would, and again, I am a chicken crap better. I am very, very conservative and safe. I work hard for my money. I ain't just throwing money around flippantly on bets that may or may not hit. I focus on a lot of the under bets personally, especially with like game day, prop bets, things like that. So for me, I would take the over with 9.5, like Dan Panuda's talking about here, and I would take the under. Or I wouldn't touch. I'm sorry, I wouldn't tease it to 10.5. If you feel comfortable teasing it to 10.5, again, I told you guys I think it's going to be 10 to 13 wins. Well, if they only get 10, I'm a hypocrite for saying I wouldn't, or I'm for saying that I would touch that teasing it to plus 150, if that makes sense. So, with that being said, that is the end of hour one. For those of you listening on the pod, we'll see you on the other side for hour two.